Welcome everyone to this research update session at our 4th annual virtual global partner meeting. I'm Phaedra Charlton, Director of Communications and Marketing with the World Ovarian Cancer Coalition. Today we're exploring pioneering work that has the possibility to transform our approach to early detection and diagnosis in ovarian cancer, a disease that we know is often marked by nonspecific symptoms and is often diagnosed in the later stages. We are joined today by Dr. Elizabeth Dolan, Research Fellow in Health Data Science at the University of Nottingham's NLab. Dr. Dolan has been at the forefront of an innovative study investigating how everyday shopping data, such as purchases tracked through loyalty cards, might reveal pre-diagnostic behaviors linked to ovarian cancer. This unique approach suggests that seemingly ordinary purchases like pain relief or digestive products could hold vital clues to symptom patterns, helping us identify risks sooner and supporting early intervention. Her research has been developed in close collaboration with Ovacome, one of our valued partner organizations in the UK. Their advocates offered invaluable insights, shaping both the study's design and its direction. Today, we will delve into the study's findings, explore how artificial intelligence and machine learning is used to analyze these patterns, and look ahead at how this line of research might evolve and the role of patient advocates in guiding studies with profound public health potential. Dr. Dolan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So I guess we'll just start off, but this study uses an innovative approach by analyzing shopping data to explore health patterns related to ovarian cancer. Could you start by giving us a brief overview of the study and what motivated you to focus on ovarian cancer specifically?
Yeah, so I've been looking in this area for, it's about 5 years now. I started my PhD and I joined the NLab at Nottingham University, and they specialise in looking at commercial data sets. So and I was specialising in shopping data. So they've been working with these data sets for over a decade and applying machine learning to these data sets to see if they can do any social good. When I joined to do my PhD, I was put on the speciality of shopping data and health, and I had access to all this data which showed what people were buying in terms of medication, as well as supermarket data, so high street retailer data from health and beauty, but also supermarket data. And my project was to look at how we could use this for health. And I had, unfortunately, in the previous year, had lost my sister to ovarian cancer. So it was very, very much present in my mind when I was looking at all these health and self-medication items that people might be purchasing, that women might be purchasing these in response to the symptoms of ovarian cancer. Having been very close with my sister and kind of lived that experience with her, with the symptoms, I can remember his exact day when she showed me her stomach, when it was bloated, the fatigue, the towards the end, the constipation, the stomach distension, and I saw that all these products that could be bought, and because we specialize in prediction, I said, hang on a minute, there might be something here, and could we do something with this? So I think you mentioned Ovacome, so that's where I went straight away. I talked to my team and said, do you think this is something that we could do? I was very lucky my PhD wasn't completely set, so there was room to look at where we focused the research. And I spoke to my team. They said, yes, that seems like a brilliant idea. They had no idea about ovarian cancer and the symptoms, and they were like, is this a thing? And I was like, yes. But the first thing I did was phone Ovacome, because they had worked with me and my sister, and we had used them for support. And I just wanted to see whether they thought this was a good idea. So that was actually quite a tearful conversation with Victoria over the phone. I was ready to be a professional, and then when I phoned up, it didn't go that way. But it ended on us agreeing to work as a team towards this, and then that's what created the first study was to go and see, because that was my personal experience, but what was the experience from for other women who had ovarian cancer. So we partnered with Ovacome. I got involved. This was about 6 months before we went into COVID. So I got to go to lots of events and meet lots of women. And then Ovacome helped me create the survey study, which was a survey that we sent out to women with ovarian cancer to see whether they were doing these types of behaviours, what types of behaviours they might be doing in response to the possible symptoms that were possibly linked to their eventual ovarian cancer diagnosis. We then applied machine learning to this, to all the answers that they'd given us from the survey, and we could see that actually there was the potential to spot patterns, because women who were buying more frequently actually had a longer time to diagnosis from the first health problem that they were reporting, and they were shopping more often. These were women who had actually been advised by their doctors that they had another condition that wasn't ovarian cancer. So we could see that this data was really, really really important and could show us key messages and maybe help us spot those women that hadn't been diagnosed. And then the second part of the project was then we worked with one of the retailers, and we went to meet them, and we said, we're doing this research, and actually with this great researcher called Tracy Thorney that I still work with, and she said, you won't believe this, but we're actually already working with somebody doing this, Imperial College London, the CLOCK study, the Cancer Loyalty Card study, and she would just, because it's such ovarian cancer is quite rare condition to study. It doesn't get as much research as it deserves or we want. So she put me in touch with them, and now we work together. So the second project was myself and NLab applying our machine learning and our knowledge of shopping data to the loyalty card data that CLOCKS had collected from women with and without ovarian cancer, but also then applying all the knowledge that we collected with Ovacome on the different types of products that women were purchasing. And that really helped the machine learning side of it, because what's really important is when we look at data that we're actually using real world learnings and women's actual experiencing. So we're not just we're applying that to the data. We've got that knowledge, and we can use that to create better machine learning models.
So it sounds so many collaborations. It's amazing. And I guess just to go back to your collaboration with Ovacome, how valuable were the insights from them in developing the survey questions, and did their experiences in the advocacy space help shape the what you asked in your research?
Definitely, and I think it's a really, really good example of that. So we were looking at self-medication, but when I spoke to at different events to women with ovarian cancer, just conversations that, nothing formal, I realized that women were doing other behaviors in response. So one of the initial questions that was in the survey was, what behaviors did you do in response to your symptoms? And they weren't just self-medicate. That was one of them that a majority of women reported doing, but there was also diet, exercise, and we had buying clothes in response to their body shape. And this was something that we just heard from a few people, so we put it in the survey. And actually, well, a lot of women were doing all these behaviours, some were doing a few. But we looked at we put this question in, and people responded that they were buying new clothes. And then when we took this to the actual loyalty card data, that was seen and was important in making those predictions. And without working with Ovacome, we would have never made, I believe that would have come up, but we wouldn't have known whether that was just coincidence or whether that was related. So having these two sources of knowledge coming together was really, really key.
Wow. So I guess back to to the AI machine learning. So wondering if you could break down in simpler terms, what role did methods like, and you'll have to explain this to me because I don't understand it completely. So data stratification, feature engineering, and cross-validation play. What role did those play in helping you identify patterns in women's shopping behavior?
Okay, so when we talk about machine learning or AI, it differs from traditional statistics because the main aim is prediction. So we want to make sure that, and what we mean by that is we'll train the model on a already seen data set, and then we need to test it on data we've not seen before so it can make predictions of, and this was a classification model, which means we were looking at whether women didn't or did have ovarian cancer. So it was trying to predict. And all our emphasis is on whether it can make that prediction. And what we wanted to find out here is whether shopping data improve those predictions, because there's other things we can use to predict ovarian cancer. The main one being age. So if we're not adding anything else to that, to how good we are at predicting ovarian cancer, and it might not be worth doing all this research and investing in shopping data. So that's basically what we wanted to do. And those methods that you mentioned, make sure we do it robustly. So when you're looking at data stratification, here we were doing particular segmentation. So we actually did 30 experiments in total of different models, looking at women of different ages and different shopping frequencies. So that was to test whether, because we want to make sure we're testing comparable groups. So we want to make sure that the model isn't predicting on, say, in one group, people shopped more, but that was just a coincidence. So we need to make sure that we've got people of similar shopping habits. And we also need to make sure we've got people of similar age. So we don't want to, then we want to show that if we add shopping data, it's actually improving that prediction. The prediction isn't just working off something else. So we're trying to explain it. So that's the doing lots of different types of data, the stratification. When we could, you mentioned something called cross-validation. What we want to do is, as I said, prediction is all about testing on new data. So this was a small sample size. We're hoping to increase how many we're looking at. But because it's a small sample size, we want to train on the complete data set. We don't want to leave any data out. But that means we don't have that separate data set to test on to check that we can predict it. Now, cross-validation, what that does, it means that we can train on all the data, but then we use cross-validation to split the data and essentially create a new type of data set that we use as that test data set. Now, it's not as good as using a completely brand new data set, but it's a really good way of creating a test to see if it will make those predictions. Now, what we actually did here is nested cross-validation, which is an even harder test to pass, because, and I'll probably bamboozle you with technical things, but it basically tests the hyperparameters that we use on the model, and then it tests separately on the unseen data. So we say, but essentially what you need to know is it's a much more robust test, because it's not as optimistic as just a standard cross-validation. Because what we really wanted to make sure is that we were proving that there was value here. And in fact, another thing we did when it comes to terms of data is we looked at it across multiple timeframes, because shopping data is really noisy, because it's not classical clinical data. It's not collected in a controlled environment, and it's behavioral data. We always get questions about, well, how I just buy random things, and I might go off and do this, or suddenly I buy for this other person. And so it's really, really noisy, which is real world data, basically behavioral data, which is what AI and machine learning is really, really good at predicting on, because it can deal with this noisiness. But what you've got to make sure is that with shopping data, that noise can vary over time. So one time we could say, oh, we can predict which women had ovarian cancer and which women didn't. But another time, for some reason, and we don't know why, people were randomly shopping more. So it made it hard to distinguish between the shopping of those with and without ovarian cancer. Now, when we did that, we found that the predictions only worked out of 2 out of 3 of those timeframes. So we're still very much, it's really good potential that we're seeing these results, but we're still very much early days, and we've still got a lot to do to confirm that we can actually make these predictions. And one of those things is increasing the sample that we work with. So that kind of probably gives you more of an idea of the complexity. I think one other thing you mentioned was feature engineering, which sounds probably more complicated than it is. But what it essentially means is working out what you're going to put into the model. So that kind of, we call it a variable, or often called a variable, or called a feature, but essentially what information you're going to put into the model. And the engineering is how you calculate that number that you're going to put in. Now, that was again why the survey from Ovacome was really, really useful, because shopping data is very high in dimensionality. Now, what that means is, if you think about, say, Tesco supermarket, that has over 65,000 individually named items, and each transaction comes with a timestamp to the second. So if you start to imagine that kind of visually, how do you then put that into the few features that you're going to put into from that many 65? Then how do you reduce that to put that into a model so that it can run, essentially? And we're working on ways to do this kind of automatically, but those for shopping data are still in development. So essentially talking to women and working out which products we should focus on means that we can reduce what data we're inputting into the model. And so that was really key. One of the features we used was the combined key products, which was essentially made from we had this survey, and we thought it might just be a couple of products that women were buying, but actually it was a variety of products. I think there was top 10, and we looked at the data, and that was and we looked at what people were buying, and we could break that down. And so it wasn't just pain and indigestion we were looking at. As I said, we looked at clothes, antacids, probiotics. There was, even eye cream and foundation came up on the survey. Now, that didn't come up in the loyalty card data, but by working with Ovacome and having that service study, we knew how to create these features, basically that feature engineering.
Wow. So it sounds like there's amazing potential, and it's good that it's encouraging that you're continuing your work. And I guess based on the results you have so far, what does this suggest about how purchasing data might signal symptom management behaviors in the aid of early detection? I know you're a health data researcher, and going into diagnosis is completely different. But from your perspective, what are your thoughts?
So I think the first thing is, even just without all the machine learning that we've been doing to reach prediction, just looking at the data confirms that women are purchasing as they self-reported, and we can see that in the data. So that all the products that people were reporting buying, we could see that they were purchasing in the data. Then there was products that were distinctively being purchased that you could distinguish between the two. Those were antacids, clothes, and vitamins. So and they were further in advance of there's many studies looking at how far in advance of diagnosis the symptoms occur, and there's quite a lot of disagreement in that area of when we can spot them. And this time-stamp description of when those symptoms are occurring, even that in itself is useful. And those showing that the behavioral things, like creates tangible things that you can talk around, buying the clothes, buying the antacids, this behavior that you can discuss with your GP, even that in itself is really, I think will be really important. And then from a predictive side, the fact that we can distinguish and see these subtle patterns previous, and we can see that there is an actual difference, because I think there's always, because they're always unspecific, so about whether you can tell, the fact that we're starting to see these signals where there is a difference and we can tell, I think that's really, really important.
So what you say you're still in the early days. So what's next in this line of research? Are there specific steps or studies planned to build on these findings, like such as testing predictive models with new data sets, or are you planning on expanding even into other health conditions?
So the good news is that the CLOCS, the Cancer Loyalty Card study, has received more funding, and Nottingham University are a co-investigator on that. So there's plans to get further recruitment. So we'll have that larger sample size that we need to do more tests from more complicated machine learning models that we're able to do once we get a further sample size. We are looking at expanding it to other cancers. There's things in the pipeline, so we're looking at lung cancer and whether we can get that data into the NHS so we can use that to improve predictive models that are already happening. So there's predictive models that already predict on kind of clinical data, and whether adding shopping data to that will improve it. I'm also expanding what I'm looking at to other gynecological health. What I've learned from doing this is that the shopping data is really, really rich data for women. Women seem to self-medicate a lot when it comes to their health. And so currently I'm starting to explore bacterial vaginosis and UTIs, and that will help in developing methods that we can use to use this data to help us learn about what women are experiencing, how they're responding to it, their symptoms when it comes to gynecological health. So that's what we've got in process. We've got other funding bids going forward, funding bids to do with infrastructure. So as I said, one of the things is we're kind of working out whether this data is useful, and it seems very, very promising. I think we've already proved that for respiratory disease. I think we're getting there with ovarian cancer. We've shown the potential, but it's making sure that we have the kind of infrastructure, the IT side, to get these health data sets to where they need to be, to those healthcare professionals. So there's lots of different parts that need to come together to make this work, but it's looking really promising, and I'm pushing it forward as much as I can.
Dr. Dolan, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for talking about explaining this amazing and interesting survey. It's really nice to, with everything that you hear about AI these days, it's really nice to see such a beautiful, constructive use of the technology and how it might benefit women in the future. So thank you very much, and we wish you all the best of luck in your future work.
Okay. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. Okay. Bye.